Tonight on the Daily Debrief.
He proceeded to tell me that he was God.
A bewildered officer's interrogation of the man who dropped his daughter to her death in the dark waters of Tampa Bay, as an attorney recounts some of Phoebe Jonchuck's final moments.
He grabbed her by the arm, yanked her out of the chair, and then just walked out.
Plus, a teen has her day in court after shoving her friend off a 60-foot-high bridge. Does the sentence fit the crime? Also, a self-proclaimed white supremacist who murdered a woman at a protest avoids a federal death sentence. And a delay in the case of a man accused of murdering a beloved Georgia beauty queen. The nation's most fascinating cases are on the Daily Debrief. It's Thursday, March 28th. Good evening, everybody. Julie Rendelman, Ashley Wilcott, along with me for this edition of The Debrief. The defense has the case of a Florida man accused of dropping his 5-year-old daughter off a bridge and killing her. Jonchuck is accused of murdering Phoebe Jonchuck by releasing her into Tampa Bay. The question is whether the defendant is legally insane or whether he can be held criminally responsible. Prosecutors are trying him on charges of first-degree murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and aggravated fleeing and eluding officers. An officer who interrogated the defendant testified that the defendant at one point claimed he was God.
I introduced myself as Terry. I introduced myself as Sergeant Terry Hubble and asked him what his name was.
What did he say?
He proceeded to tell me that he was God and that I needed to address him as such. And then he said my name. He's Terry, you need to take me to the city of Babylon.
When you got in the car, he was agitated and yelling?
Yes.
Okay. When you introduced yourself, did he stop talking or did he keep on yelling?
He would, when I was talking and introducing myself and asking a question, he would listen. And then he would yell an answer back to me. He basically would tell me that he was God or the fallen angel of Michael. And he would say, Terry, you need to take me to the city of Babylon. He would not tell me who he threw over the bridge, and he would not give me his name.
The police officer who was with the defendant in a squad car testified that the defendant appeared to be faking it when he was crying.
He was very quiet, non-emotional, except for a couple of times he would almost appear to be trying to make himself to forcefully cry. And then that time would only last.
You can answer.
Would only last for like a couple of seconds, and it would just go back to like a blank look.
It didn't appear to be genuine crying to you?
No, it was not. It was like he was forcing himself to create tears.
And how many times did that happen?
A couple of times. He made 3 spontaneous statements at that point. He said at one point he did not throw her off the bridge, that he dropped her into the water. He stated that you don't know what I've been going through, and he also made a statement as he did not know what he did wrong.
Another detective testified about interrogating the defendant. Here is the cross-examination.
He asked you if he could see his Bible, right?
That's correct.
John asked you if Phoebe was okay. I think he used the word all right.
I believe that's accurate.
And then at one point, he went on to say to you that he wanted to tell you everything, right?
Yes, ma'am.
He started telling you that he had felt different in the last few weeks.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And he told you about recently being at the church.
Yes, ma'am.
And that he had spoken with a man by the name of Father Bill.
Yes, ma'am.
Father Bill had told him, John, that Pope Francis wasn't the real Pope, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that he, meaning John, was in fact the real Pope.
Yes, ma'am.
And John also told you on at least one occasion that this whole thing that was going on was, he used the word conspiracy, right?
Yes, ma'am.
The defendant's priest said he perceived that the defendant had mental health issues, but on cross-examination said he never saw the defendant was a threat.
You never thought that for any moment during your conversation that he would be a danger to himself, right?
Correct.
You never thought that he posed any danger to Phoebe, right?
Correct.
Okay. Had you thought that, you would have handled things differently, right?
Correct.
And he made one comment about him being the Pope, right?
Correct.
What did he say?
I don't remember the context, but that he mentioned that he thought he was the Pope. I questioned him about it, said, "You don't really believe that, do you?" And he answered no.
Okay. So he withdrew that quickly, right? And you talked about the Bible.
Yes.
He didn't say anything to you about the Bible that was alarming, that you recall.
No, he was concerned about it. Wanted to know what it was. He didn't know what it was a Bible even.
Okay. And you told him that this was a special book, it's an antique, he should cherish it, right?
It seemed like a family heirloom.
You could tell there's something a little off with him, right? You've said that previously.
It was definitely off,
Okay.
and his thoughts were rambling. So
Right.
I had to sort of keep him focused.
Right. But he was able to have that conversation with you, correct?
I was able to have a conversation.
Okay. And at no point did he ever say that he was God.
No.
He never told you that you're God.
No.
He never said that he's Michael, the archangel.
No.
Never told you that you're Michael, the archangel.
No. To me, it seemed like he was in crisis, but that he was in contact with reality.
The defendant's own father testified about why his family dissolved and about the defendant's use of salt around his daughter's window.
When Michelle was pregnant with Johnny, was she using drugs?
Not to my knowledge, but then afterwards, I realized that it was possible.
Why did you and Michelle split up?
Because she spent all my money.
On what?
Drugs.
Did John pour salt around the house?
Yes.
Did he pour salt around the windows?
Yes.
Did he pour salt around the door to Phoebe's bedroom?
I don't know about that.
Did he tell you what the salt was for?
Objection, Judge.
Did he tell you why he put the salt there?
Apparently, it's to keep out evil spirits.
Okay, that's the father. Earlier in this case, the defendant's mother testified about swimming lessons for the victim who was eventually drowned. Prosecutors used that testimony to point to the defendant's callousness.
In 2013, did you have a conversation with the defendant regarding swim lessons for Phoebe?
Yes.
What was that conversation?
Just because she'd like to go swimming and everything, but she wanted you to hold her, and she wouldn't go without floaties or anything.
So did you recommend swimming lessons for her?
Yes.
Okay. You said in 2013, you said that she went swimming with floaties. Was the defendant present for such a time?
Yes.
Okay. And she needed floaties and someone to hold her?
She liked somebody to hold on to her, yes.
Okay. And about the last 6 months of her life, were you her primary caregiver?
Yes.
Okay. Has she learned to swim at any time during that time?
No.
Joining me tonight here on the debrief are Judge Ashley Wilcott and former prosecutor Julie Rendelman. So listening to this testimony about the swimming lessons, this girl seemed like she was uncomfortable in water, and to think, Julie, that she drowned. It's sad.
Yes, obviously it's sad. I mean, there's nothing but tragedy that surrounds this young girl's life. Is quite frankly, there's nothing but tragedy that surrounds everyone in this family's life. But the issue is whether or not he, specifically at the time of the crime, had the mental disease or defect that qualifies for him not being held responsible.
Okay, and we've got evidence on both sides of that. Judge Wilcott, he's saying that he's the real Pope, but then wait a minute, no, he's not. He backtracks that. Then he's God, then he's an angel. Okay, so he's saying things like that, but he also fled after committing this. He took off. Is that enough to raise in front of the jury that he knew what he did was wrong and therefore he can be held criminally liable.
Well, that's obviously the decision for the jury. But here's what I think, Aaron. I think that regardless of what he said, you have to look at the actions that backed that up. And I think that it sounds like manipulative behavior versus he didn't understand what he was doing.
Julie, you're nodding your head, maybe not.
He'd have to be so manipulative that he thought out from beginning to end, going to the father days before, going to the attorney days before, just so he could plan this murder. I think that's a big leap, and that's what I have an issue with.
Okay, so you're seeing not criminally responsible here.
I didn't say that. I'm saying I don't know that they have enough, but I don't know that it's pure manipulation. That's the issue.
We'll have to wait and see how the evidence rolls out. We will take you back inside the Jonchuck courtroom in a moment. But first, the owner of the New England Patriots fires back at the sheriff whose tip led to his arrest. Find out Robert Kraft's attorneys what they're saying in calling the sheriff a liar. Find out why. Speaking of lies, did this next man lie or did he tell the truth? President Trump is now weighing in on the legal controversy surrounding Jussie Smollett. That's after the break. President Donald Trump is calling for a federal investigation into why Chicago's top prosecutor suddenly dropped charges against actor Jussie Smollett. A grand jury indicted Smollett for lying to police when he claimed two men perpetrated a racist and homophobic attack upon him. In a tweet this morning, the president said the FBI and the DOJ would be looking into the dropped charges, which he called outrageous and an embarrassment to our nation. Meanwhile, the federal government is suing Facebook. The Department of Housing and Urban Development says Facebook violated the Fair Housing Act by encouraging, enabling, and causing housing discrimination. They say Facebook allowed advertisers to restrict property listings so that they could only be viewed by users of certain races, marital statuses, and disabilities. Facebook is also accused of mining user data to determine which people would see certain ads. A Facebook spokesperson told CNBC that the company was surprised by the legal action, even though Facebook settled a similar lawsuit with the ACLU last week. There has been a conclusion to the federal case against the man who admitted running a car into counter-protesters in Charlottesville, Virginia last year. Rachel Stockman reports.
James Alex Fields, convicted of murder for driving into a crowd at the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally, has pleaded guilty to federal hate crime charges. The plea agreement will spare him from facing the death penalty. A Virginia jury found Fields guilty on state charges of first-degree murder in the death of Heather Heyer in 2018. The shocking video of Fields plowing into a crowd of counter-protesters quickly went viral. Fields faced 30 federal hate crime charges. As part of the plea agreement, prosecutors dropped the charge that carried the death penalty, and Fields pleaded guilty to the 29 others. Key to the government's hate crime case was Fields' social media history. According to the federal indictment, Fields made posts promoting white supremacy and praising Adolf Hitler before attending the Charlottesville rally in 2017. Fields will be sentenced for both the federal and state charges in July. The jury in his state case has recommended life in prison. This is Rachel Stockman for the Law and Crime Network.
Defense attorneys for New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft are lashing out at the sheriff whose investigation led to Kraft's arrest. The sheriff admitted that there's not enough evidence to prove human trafficking was occurring at the spa where local police caught Kraft allegedly soliciting prostitution. Now, previously, the sheriff said authorities zeroed in on the spa as part of a trafficking sting. Kraft's defense team is calling the sheriff a flat-out liar. Kraft has pleaded not guilty. Trial has officially been delayed for the man accused of murdering a Georgia beauty queen. Ryan Duke's attorneys successfully convinced the Georgia Supreme Court to put off the case, which was supposed to begin next week. The Supreme Court wants to determine whether it has the power to step into the case before trial to determine whether Ryan Duke deserves to have the public pay for experts on his behalf. The High Court arguments are set for May 7th. A Washington State teenager will spend 2 days in jail after shoving her friend off of a 60-foot high bridge. The recording of the shove went viral last year. The 17-year-old victim suffered 6 broken ribs and punctured lungs. An advocate had to read the victim's letter to the judge because the victim is still distraught over what had happened in the event. The judge further ordered the defendant, Taylor Smith, age 19, to not contact the victim for 2 whole years. Back now to the case of the Florida man who dropped his daughter into the nighttime waters of Tampa Bay. A family law attorney testified today about calling 911 after becoming fearful during an office visit concerning the defendant's paternity case. Here is how it started.
He said, you know, that's going to sound weird or strange. He said weird or strange. I'm not one of those words. He said, that sounds weird, but I really think that, I think you're saying Genevieve. And it caught me off guard clearly. So I kind of said, I was like, no, you know, I'm definitely not. He's like, no, you're saying Genevieve. I know you are. You just came back from the city of Babylon, which was Montreal. To him was Babylon. So I said, I insisted that I wasn't. And then he said from there, well, then if you're not saying Genevieve, then you must be God. And he was serious. Like, he wasn't joking around at that point. Like, his tone changed. And then he was serious. He was like, you're God, you're a creator. And I said, no, and I'm definitely not God. And I was starting to be a little, not at that point I knew something was not right. Then he insisted that I read the Bible to him. And I said, I can't. You said earlier that I was in Swedish. I don't speak Swedish. I can't read his Bible. I can't, I'm not going to, John. And then he said, you are the creator, you speak all languages. You know how to speak Swedish. And it wasn't joking. Like, I was starting getting like very, very nervous. He kept insisting and insisting and insisting. And every time that I said no, I could tell that he was getting more agitated and more upset. When he got, tired of me saying that I was not going to read the Bible and that I was not God, then he said, then I must be God.
From there, the interaction became much more ominous, and the attorney witnessed some of Phoebe Jonchuck's last moments.
He was standing up. At that point, I was sitting down. So it was kind of like he was looking down at me, and he got serious again. Like, he kind of got this serious look on his face, and he kind of looked down. He said, none of this is going to matter tomorrow. And then he stormed out from there. I mean, it was like he almost ran down the stairs. And when he said that, then I was thinking in my head, oh my God, what's he gonna do? He ran down the stairs. I ran after him. Phoebe was sitting on one of those chairs that I had in the waiting area. She was sitting down with a sheet of paper, crayons. She was drawing, like I expected her to be doing. And he told her, let's go, we gotta go. And Phoebe kind of froze for a second. She kind of sat there and then, almost looking like, well, I'm not finished my picture. Like almost like had that look on her face, like, well, I'm not done. Like, what do you mean we have to go? She didn't say anything, but that's the look she had. And then she wasn't moving. She kind of just sat there and froze. And then because she wasn't moving, then he went towards her, grabbed the crayon and the paper that she was holding, threw everything in that little basket that I had with the kid stuff. So she threw everything in there, and then he grabbed her by the arm, yanked her out of the chair, and then just walked out.
And not long later, that little girl's life came to an end. There was a bizarre question, though, in this case from the jury about a mistrial. Here is the jury's conversation with the judge.
You had a question, I guess a couple of questions, one about what would happen if the jurors couldn't come to decisions, and then what would happen if somebody sabotaged the trial?
Yeah, like...
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
Not a hung jury, but it's not coming to mind.
Well, when you said sabotage, what did you mean by that?
Just anything. Here's just a question.
Okay.
I was wondering, like, my main question was, what happens if you have not a hung jury, but what's the, I'm not thinking.
Deadlocked?
Mistrial. Mistrial.
Oh, okay.
That was my main question. Like, I was wondering, do they pick another jury, or do we still have to keep on going?
if there was a mistrial, you wouldn't keep on going.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was
Right.
just wondering. That was my main question.
Okay.
So.
But there's no particular reason you asked either one of those
Oh, no,
questions?
I was just wondering. And mostly because of the mistrial question of whether the original jury had to keep on going after the mistrial, or did they pick a new one?
No.
Okay.
Anyone have any other questions? Okay, thank you. We'll be right with you.
Yeah, I was just curious.
All right, Judge Ashley Wilcott, Julie Rendelman. Judge, I asked you about this one yesterday. Julie Rendelman, you had very perplexed looks on your face listening to that.
Yeah, it leads me to believe several things. One, that they're talking about it already, and so that there's concern that they're not in agreement. So he's worried, well, if they're not in agreement, what's going to happen? Or two, he's just getting ahead of himself and is worried about what's going to happen to this case if we don't come to a conclusion.
They're not supposed to be deliberating at this point. This question came up in the middle of the state's case in chief.
I understand that, and maybe Ashley can take over, but yeah, usually the judge at that point would say, this might be a little premature. You should not be thinking ahead. We haven't heard all the evidence, but she didn't do that. So that might be an issue for appeal. We don't know.
We talked about this a little bit yesterday. Has your mind crystallized a better potential response to this?
No, I think either better instruction to the jury at that time about don't deliberate yet, you're getting ahead of yourself, or like we discussed, let the judge question each of the jurors and perhaps the attorneys do so to make certain they're on the right track and there's no mistrial because of this or an appeal.
And quickly, Julie Rendelman, that decision from the attorney to make the 911 call, there are some states that allow you to do that, even if something is said in confidence, if you fear that someone else may be imminently harmed.
Oh, and I think she's the best thing for the defense in this case, because it's not normal that an attorney is going to give up their client unless they think that there is something seriously wrong, and she did, and that's why she called 911.
You have to wonder if she's sitting there thinking, gee, should I have made the call even 30 seconds earlier? You have to wonder.
Yeah, it's,
we don't know. Anyway, we're just about out of time here. Thanks for both of you joining us tonight, and thanks for watching The Debrief. I'll be off for a little bit, but Michael Bryant and Rachel Stockman will bring you the day's headlines right here on The Debrief on the Law&Crime Network at 5 Eastern.